What's popular YouTube? Another day, another demo. Here we are back with another one. Sorry I haven't uploaded in a minute. We got the news video coming out. This one's going to be a talking piece about Farley. I didn't pre-watch the video, the demo, so I'm going to watch it now live with you guys to talk about it. It's more of a talking piece. The actual demo itself is so random. It's just an ancient match versus Ents. I picked one out of a random series of games. I wanted to pick one that was slightly flattering for him. It's a decent CT side on Ancient. But overall, it's just going to be talking about storylines here with Astralis. Don't expect a lot of analysis out of this one. Let's hop in. Let's get into it. I don't want to waste anybody's time. We're here to figure out if Farley can save Astralis. If he can take the ass out of Astralis. That's the question of the match right now. I don't think so. Okay, yeah. So, you know, who is Farley? Farley is he's a Danish opper. He's been floating around. He was playing on FPX, and he's quite an aggressive player, and in that way maybe a little bit different stylistically, at least on paper, to what we know about Lucky, who seems to be, you know, quite a composed player, but not necessarily aggressive or doesn't fit any of those characteristics per se. Farley is a guy who I heard that Farley at one point was on the short list to join Astralis. I heard, and I don't know if this is true, so forgive me if this is not true, but I heard that Lucky was actually like the fourth opper that Astralis tried to get. And for one reason or another, other oppers said no to joining the team, or it didn't work out. I think Acor, Farley, and a couple other... Acor sounds a little crazy now, but at the time, people weren't really sure if he was gonna, be really good or not. So I think he was someone who made sense at the time. But anyways, I think Lucky ended up being the player who joined, coming from Tricked, and I think Farley wanted to play on FPX, but I don't know for sure. So I don't want to spread rumors or anything. That's just what I heard. I heard from a good source, but I'm not a reporter, so I don't know. I'm just saying something that I heard. I heard he was like the fourth choice, and Farley was ahead of him originally. So it kind of sets us up, in an interesting way if that's true, because that means that this is an option that they considered potentially, and I'm sure he was always an option they considered, rumors or not. It had to be someone that you thought about. Farley showed good stuff on FPX, and it's kind of a mixed bag, especially when you look at his results recently. And I think the Farley hype was extremely huge for a bit, and then cooled off a little bit. For people who've watched him play, we know why you might want to pick him up, why he should go to the next level potentially. I think he has shown some really good stuff, but he's up and down. But this one for me is weird, because the question isn't so much, is Farley a decent opper? I think Farley's a decent opper, and I think Farley could be even better on a better team, for sure. And I think Farley could be a better opper than Lucky. I think, in fact, that much is not even that... I hate to put it like this, not even that difficult, considering what we saw out of Lucky. And I will extend him, the excuse of Glaive saying they've had multiple roster changes, where Lucky has had to deal with playing with 3 different lineups on Astralis, and has had a bunch of role switches. He went from opping to not opping, though that might be on the merit of his opping, where Glaive even picked it up for a minute. But that's all to say that I don't think that's all on Lucky. I mean, Lucky did have a very bad Cato. He had it was his worst event so far on Astralis. He was like minus 35 on KD. When I was casting, one thing that I really noticed, this is the first event that I was watching Lucky play. And excuse me, as we might talk about a lot of players except for Farley watching this game. That was nice. Guess he could rifle. Rifle 2. One thing I noticed with Lucky was that we were watching Mirage a couple of times, and Astralis had the most uninspired CT setups ever. I don't know why, but it didn't feel like Glaive and Lucky were working together on the A site. We go back to the Blast Fall final, and we had insane CT sides on Mirage from Astralis, like their comeback versus Heroic. And in between that, a bunch of online events where Astralis played very badly and had bad results. And individually, you know, what is the problem with Astralis? It's multifaceted. I think on the one hand, you can point to individuals and say, certain players are not consistent enough on this team. That's true. Config, for example, was a beast at the fall final. BlameF was a beast at the fall final, and Glaive also had a great fall final. When they went online, the only player that was consistent online was BlameF. And on both the lands on either side of the online events, BlameF was also the only one who was consistent. Even at Kato, he had a decent Kato. Not an outstanding Kato, a decent Kato. Config had a really terrible online, a really great LAN at Fall Final, and a really great Kato as well. Glaive had a very bad Kato, a very good Fall Final, and very bad online. So kind of for 2/3 of it, Glaive was not there. And I think Glaive's inconsistency matters, and I think Config's inconsistency is, you know, matter at least for the online port, but at least he's been consistent on LAN. And Lucky has just not had many good events overall. I wouldn't call him the sole problem of the team. And because of these other players not playing well consistently, I can't in good faith say Farley is going to come in and save this team because Lucky was that bad. I don't believe that. I'm not sure anybody believes that. So, well, why? Why are they inconsistent? I mean, that's a really hard question to answer. One thing that was great that we saw a piece from Chad Sponge Burchill at Kato, the group stage, where he did an interview with Lucky and Glaive. Glaive talked specifically about how him and BlameF have a ton of overlapping roles. I did an interview with Floppy, and I asked him what he thought about Astralis, and he said that Astralis have overlapping roles between BlameF and Zipix, between Glaive and Config. He said those two pairs, from his perspective, were the ones who are overlapping. And I was like, yeah, maybe that is true. And then I watched this interview from Glaive where he talked to Chad, and he said it's actually him and BlameF that have role trouble. Because apparently they follow each other's roles on T and CT side on most maps. And so they did something where Glaive takes all of the CT side or all of the T side roles, and BlameF takes the others. So they split it up, which means that on every map, they both basically had to learn brand new roles. You know, they both haven't had the space that they wanted and have had to learn brand new roles, which that's going to lead to inconsistency. On top of the fact that they're bringing Mirage into the pool, which Zipix and Glaive have both struggled on, and Zipix overall is playing some of the worst CS of his entire career. And I don't want to mince my words when I say that, because we know what Zipix is capable of, and so far on Astralis, it's not been good enough. It's just not been good enough. Online, anything. So that's why pinning it all on Lucky isn't fair, but it is also fair to say that he is one of the issues in the sense that he can't really save them. Like if they had Device, they'd be more consistent overall, even if the other pieces were inconsistent. Device, you know, despite all the troubles he's had this year, still landed like a top 10 spot. Like, you know, he's going to be very consistent. So that's somebody who could like maybe save Astralis or buy them time while they figure out their road trouble. Farley's not got that kind of power. I mean, he just can't. You can't expect him to do that. That would be unfair to Farley. And even if he's, you know, very good, I don't think that's enough to figure out what, you know, Astralis' issues. So the part that really also confuses me a lot is that I believe Glaive, the two IGLs, I believe that Glaive is working hard. I really do. I mean, from everything that I've heard him talk about to the way people have talked about him, I haven't heard anything that would say like, oh, he's demotivated or not trying. I've seen nothing but him really, really putting in a lot of effort. We know that doesn't necessarily matter. You know, I talked about this from what's funny about like Cirque, for example, is everyone's like, Daps is like, why is everyone calling for Cirque to get cut? He puts in so much work. And look at a player like Nafly. Like, he, you know, always talks about how little he actually does outside of actually playing the game. But he just delivers. I mean, he puts up huge numbers. And look at Farley go. You can put up huge numbers, not put up any work. What else matters? I mean, Nafly made top 20 this year. He's best player on Liquid. You know, he does what he needs to do. That's the point. It really doesn't matter how much work you put in. You put in as much work as you need to. The rest, you just need to figure it out. That's kind of it, right? So it's kind of the same thing. If you want to extend, you know, if you want to be particularly, you know, nice to Glaive about how hard he's trying, it's like, doesn't really matter. I mean, he's won 4 majors, GOAT IGL, done everything. It's not like he can't. It's just that we aren't seeing it in terms of what he can do. And what confuses me the most, again, is seeing him as an IGL. We have some rounds where the mid-round calls and the organization look solid from Astralis. He still has that quality of, he knows exactly what site is easier to take, and then people can organize around that. But then I watched like that Mirage game where him and Lucky don't appear to have any kind of relationship when they're playing the A side on Mirage, and I'm like, this is the least inspired setup I've ever seen. Glaive is on the site with Lucky. What's going on here? Is it that there is actually no ideas? Do they not talk about their CT side Mirage? I remember we watched an entire half of CT side where Lucky sat in behind Ticket with an op every single round. I couldn't even wrap my head around it, really. Like, you sit behind Ticket, sometimes that's a good idea. But sometimes, if they have nades, they're going to smoke you, molly behind the box, flash you back in CT, and then you're useless. And if Glaive is playing in the site, he's going to die because they don't have any support, and everybody's in a very predictable position, then you lose. I don't understand even how you get away with that on a team with Glaive, right? He knows better, I guess, is the only way I can understand it. So I don't know why, but that's what we're seeing. I don't think this is a blame F problem. I think Config can't play badly online because that'll only exacerbate any issues they have. Zipix can't just be in this form. So those are things that help. Those are things that help recuse the whole, you know, other players on the team or whatever. They can all kind of blame each other, which is really a terrible spot to be in. But I really believe that, you know, it's easy to say now, oh, this team was never going to work. But from my perspective, Blame F and Config coming into Astralis either highlights that roles are way more important than we thought, or that these players are not as malleable as we thought, or they're two such great players. Config is in, you know, incredibly aggressive rifler who's super strong and whatever, and he played well on LAN. So, but in between then, he literally tweeted out like 2 weeks ago, "I've never felt more irrelevant in the server." It's like, man, what is going on? You know? So we might have a situation where we end up feeling bad for Farley here because he's coming into a mess. I mean, he's coming into an absolute mess. And if he has outstanding performances, they still might lose. Because Glaive has to learn how to, you know, play his new spots. And Blame has to learn how to play his new spots, though he's obviously doing better overall. Much better. Then I guess Farley has to hope that Config's going to be consistent online, which is also a random intangible that you can't really train for or do anything about. And then Farley has to be used to new teammates. They have to be used to his opping style. I think he needs to be able to take control of... Oh my god, is he going to win? Oh, okay. Nice try. I think he needs to be able to take control of space and take initiative and lead as an opper on this team, and just change the way the team plays totally. I mean, I really don't get it. It's a total enigma to me. Look at the players coming to Astralis. I didn't really have an excuse for them. I was like, Blamef and Config coming in? Hell yeah. Like, yeah, they lose Dupree and Magisk. I mean, amazing players, of course. But it's like, if you lost those two players and got Blamef and Config, who were the superstars of complexity, and Config, somebody that people have thought would end up on Astralis someday, and Blame's top 20, year over year. It's not like you're gaining some stuff in other places, but maybe the roles thing is too much. Also, they lose Zonic, which is a big one. I don't know what Abe's doing, but the team doesn't look good as a team. The individuals don't look good as individuals. It's kind of like, not sure if you can put any onus on him. Nobody knows what he says. I don't know. I personally miss the Zonic presence, of course. It's the worst Astralis we've ever seen. It's very confusing. There's so many apparent flaws, and everyone's been quite honest about it, which is great. BlameF said recently, not enough individuals are showing up, and that's also true. In his perspective, he shows up, he frags, and people just can't seem to win a trade. So I think depending on Farley's personality and how clearly he can see through the interference, that'll make the biggest difference for Astralis from his end. But I really believe he can only do so much, and they'll probably need to. I mean, I don't know. Can they play with Xyp9x still after what we've seen from him? In the situation, like if 4 out of 5 are playing well and the team is doing good and Xyp9x was just not doing great, they could just wait it out, because Xyp9x signed to 2025 because he was intent on playing for that long, and you know what he can get back to. So of course you'd expect him to. But in this position, Counter-Strike moves fast these days, right? Like, people don't get 6 months anymore. I remember once upon a time, you used to be able to get mad at an organization for cutting a player within 5 months, 3, 4, 5 months. It was just reprehensible that an organization wouldn't give a player time to develop. These days, Counter-Strike moves way faster, and it's actually, I agree that you have to deliver results sooner. And there are too many good new prospects coming into Counter-Strike all the time for people to be slacking, basically, and for people to not figure it out. Things just move too quickly. So I know the job is stressful enough, and some people would get good the more time you gave them. But just because the quality of competition goes up drastically, the demands for the orgs to continue to play well goes up, and the schedule is so hectic. I mean, there's just going to be so many tournaments to qualify for at all times. You have to have results kind of all the time. Everyone's got to find a bit, a monacy, an OC. If it's tough. What do you guys think about that? This has basically just been a huge rant, because it's been kind of confusing and frustrating to think about Astralis in general. Because the fall final was such a great start. Kato, we saw some glimpses of what they could do on LAN again. But, yeah, they weren't able to hold it up for very long. And I think we might have another roster change. I think we might. I think the rumor is also that Xyp9x might get replaced. I don't know by who. Maybe they can get Lucky and he can rifle. I was kind of like, with Lucky, the other interesting thing was that sometimes I overrate Clutch a little bit when I think about players. Like, Lucky can hold his own in a 1vx. 1v2, 1v3. Seen him do all of those. And that's awesome. But they also have BlameF. They also need people to help them push forward in the mid round. Take a risk here or there. So in that sense, maybe Farley is a good fit. But lots of players who are prospects because of their clutch. And unfortunately, that's just one dimension of the game. And Lucky was kind of one-dimensional in that sense. He had a really good clutch, looked like composed, but sometimes didn't really help them move forward. Didn't seem that dynamic at times. And didn't seem to have much respect on his team as an upper, which will be huge. But Farley's got to do a lot to become a lot more consistent, and his stats straight up are just very average right now. Well, they were, at least. No idea what kind of player he's become in the few months that he's had off here between FPX and now. I believe he hasn't played anything. So yeah, those are all some big questions. This one was talking about Farley. I didn't want to drag it on for more than it needs to be. I have a lot of questions for Astralis. There are so many things that have gone wrong and are not looking good. And I think that Farley can't be expected to fix all those things. Clave needs to figure out his roles. Config needs to figure out being good online. Zipix is this whole thing where if they replace him, who do they replace him with? And what was going wrong with Zipix in the first place? And then, you know, Farley might have an environment where he can be more consistent and play well. But he's got to go into some godlike state to be able to save this team as a whole. So, no, I don't think that Farley will save Astralis. And I think they've got a lot of problems. And they're a massive org. They're a tier 1 org that has a lot of reach and power and should be expected to have really, really big results. So I would love to know what the next moves are. And I'm sure they're going to make them because they got to be focused on winning, right? With players like Config and BlameF now joining the roster. So what do you think is going to happen next? Do you agree with me or don't you? Let me know in the comments and we'll read those. And yeah, that's it. Will Farley save Astralis? Thank you for watching. As always, be safe.
Big dog shit, got my paws all dirty. Looking for a plate, that's why the dogs up early. With it white big, eat it like a McFlurry. I ain't got time to chill, I'm in a hurry. P the game, I got it for my dad.